Hi, we're back with What's Wrong with This Picture with Dennis Guillaume. We've got a couple of, we got 4 photos to look at from our viewers. What are we starting with, Dennis?
We're going to start with one by Randy McClernand from Greenfield, Indiana, or close by Greenfield. And he sent us a couple of pictures he took on a trip up to Alaska with his RV. And one of them is this one here that was taken at Muncho Lake in British Columbia.
Okay.
And I think things to notice about this, these are fine pictures. These guys have sent us some real nice images to deal with. His question was, what could I do to make these better? Well, Randy, there's not a heck of a lot you could do to make it better. You've got beautiful fluffy clouds up there, which translate into really nice reflections in the water. Beside your RV there. Mm-hmm. And so anytime you have that kind of cloud configuration, you're going to get some nice stuff if you don't blow them out by overexposing, and he didn't. He's got nice shadows and dark areas in the clouds, and they hang right over those mountains and reflect in the water. It's a nice looking shot.
I'm bringing a new term in here, but is bracketing a good rule of thumb, a good thing to do in a situation like this?
Oh, yes, it's certainly. Bracketing is always, especially when you're talking about landscaping, bracketing is always a good thing to do. And that, for the folks that don't know, is when you set your camera to take the picture as it's metered, mm-hmm. Then you tell it, and I want a picture underexposed by a half a stop or a full stop or mm-hmm. whatever you choose, and one picture overexposed by a similar amount.
Right.
In which case you end up, every time you push the button, you end up with 3 pictures, and there's a bracket, in other words, between the chosen exposure and giving you a choice of a little less or a little more exposure.
Right.
So it's a great idea.
Then you have 2 or 3 pictures to choose from, and one of them may be a more likely candidate to be the keeper.
Yeah, and if your camera doesn't allow you to do that for some reason, if it doesn't have a bracketing feature on it, most of them do, you can do it yourself. You can step down 1 step and take the picture,
yeah.
Step up above the metered level and take a picture, and so you've bracketed.
I think the professional cameras will have that, but now the point and shoots won't have that. But you can adjust the exposure yourself with the camera as well.
So, in any case, the only other thing that you might want to talk about is sky. Now, this sky is a pretty sky. Mm-hmm. But sometimes when you're in a situation where the light isn't ideal, in this case, he's got the light coming from right to left. You can mm-hmm. tell from the shadow of the RV that he's got a crossing light pattern, which is great for a little device called a polarizer. And this is a polarizing filter here that I've got in my hand. It's a little darker, usually takes a stop or so off of the exposure, but it rotates, and as it rotates, it has this polarized glass that when you get it lined up so that it's in the direction of the sunlight going mm-hmm. across your picture, it's going to cause things like detail in the clouds and blue skies and stuff like that to darken and become richer.
Okay.
And so it's a neat filter to have around, and something.
What does that do to water then?
It'll actually take some of the reflection away from water. In other words, if you're getting reflections you don't want in the water,
like glare.
Yeah, the polarizing filter will help take that reflection away, gotcha. And you'll be able to see down. In fact, if you've ever gone fishing and had a pair of polarized sunglasses on, mm-hmm. you notice you can see clear to the bottom of the creek, or
right.
You can see the bottom.
But not without them.
But without them, you just get reflections.
Okay,
it's
so
the same kind of thing.
What do we got next?
All right, the next one is another one by Randy, and again, a beautiful shot. This time he did an interesting thing. He used a panorama feature.
Okay.
In other words, what he did was he took a picture of the left side of the picture, then he took another picture partway across, being careful to overlap the 2 pictures. The one he took first is overlapped by the second one,
gotcha.
So that you've got a little common area in there that the software can see and compare. Then he took another picture off to the right of that, and he did the same thing and overlapped it. And I don't know if there's 3 or 4 pictures in here, it doesn't matter. You can take as many as you want.
Right.
And then you put them in your software and you stitch them together.
Right.
Most software has a stitching feature,
gotcha.
And that's what he's done with this. So he gets this nice broad panoramic view.
Okay.
That was a nice idea in this particular case, and then you can look at all the artistic elements like the road that's or the highway that's winding toward the mountain. And in this case, this was in Denali National Park in Alaska, and the mountain is Mount McKinley.
Right.
And so you see this road leading your eye right up to the beautiful mountain, and it's a nice feature. Now, one thing you could do with a picture like this is you could look at that and say, well, there may be a picture in a picture here. In which case, he might be able to draw in his software a box around a portion of this picture and then crop the rest away, and he's got another look at Mount McKinley.
Right.
So it's a nice idea there. Again, if the sky wasn't as blue as this is, he might want to have used a polarizing filter as another place where he could have done
or
that.
some of the tricks that you showed us in the software.
But
as well.
Randy, nice work on both of those pictures.
Beautiful.
Appreciate your sending them to us. Now let's look at another one. This one is one we saw in an earlier segment when I was talking about adjusting pictures. This is by Tom Whitney from Gainesville, Florida. And Tom was kind enough to send us this one that he took in Yellowstone Lake in early morning. And you can look at this and you can say, what a great use of light. He had the light coming from behind the canoe and created a silhouette effect. And then look at the mist rising off the water. At that time of day, there was a little foggy mist that was coming up off the water, both in front of the canoe and on the backside.
Right.
And so then with the mountains in the distance, it really makes a nice shot. And you wouldn't have to warm this any more than it is in your adjustments, because it's a nice warm picture the way it is. But you have a lot of options. You could play around with some of this stuff and see what else you could get out of that picture as a black and white, for example.
Oh yeah, it would be a great black and white.
It'd be a nice shot, but an excellent shot there. And he's got good composition. One thing I would suggest about that picture, if we can go back to it one more time, the only adjustment I might make is that I'd like to see us use the rule of thirds a little bit in this picture. Move the canoe maybe to the right and down slightly, and the sandbar, I assume that's a sandbar there, move it down a little bit so you get a little less of the foreground, but you take the canoe out of dead center.
Gotcha.
And so that, you remember
make
that...
make a little more motion, more feeling of movement in the picture.
Yeah, and you remember our discussion of rule of thirds.
Right.
That would be addressing that. Of course, rules are made to be broken, and if you don't want it that way, this is a beautiful shot.
Right. Just to recap, of course, the rule of thirds is if you take a photo and bisect or dissect it by thirds across and down, then where your intersection points of your dividing lines are, those are kind of ideal points in which to place items if you want that feeling of movement in a picture. So that's the rule of thirds.
That's one of those that Ansel Adams would have said, if you get a dozen pictures in a year that are good pictures, it's a pretty good crop.
That's right.
And I think that's probably a good crop, among the good crop that he got out of that trip. In this particular case, another one by Tom Whitney. In this one, he asked the question, what can I do about the mountains being lighter in color and a little on the hazy side, and he was pleased with what was in the foreground, but he was not real happy with those mountains at the top. And you know, Tom, really, this is another really nice shot. The only thing I would suggest here is that it's possible you could benefit maybe from a polarizing filter that would, but what we know, and look at this shot, see where the sun is hitting those mountains? It's coming from behind him. He's got overcast over him, and then the sun is coming from behind him, so that when it clears the clouds, it's hitting dead straight at the mountains. Gotcha. Polarizers don't work especially well if the light is going away from you.
I see. Okay.
And so it might not have an effect. But what he could have done is used a graduated neutral density filter. And I don't have one to show right now, but a graduated neutral density filter has a dark area at the top, a clear area at the bottom, and there's a gradual transition between the darker area, so that it's just gradated toward clear. What he could have done, perhaps, was to put that in front of the lens and then adjust how far down that dark area came, so that he darkened the sky and the tops of those mountains without affecting the rest of the picture. And he could have maybe brought those back into
So
focus.
that kind of filter comes on like a slider, so it's adjustable up and down.
Yeah. You can slide it up and down, and it helps in a lot of cases like this, and a lot of professional photographers travel with a polarizing filter and a neutral density graduated filter for that very reason.
Right, and especially when you're shooting things like mountains, you don't necessarily know what the conditions are, up there, because you're really looking from one climate to another, and it's a different, it's a totally different environment up there.
Yeah, he asked us something about making the mountains a little more crisp too, and the only thing I would say to that, Tom, is this is really pretty darn good the way it is, but if you did anything, you'd go back to that adjustment for clarity and add a little clarity to it and put a little edge on the mountains.
Right.
And then make sure that you've added a little sharpening to the picture as a whole.
Okay.
But those things may have helped it a little bit. The other thing I would say about this is if you're looking at an opportunity like this and you have framed this picture, also take a step or two or a few steps to the left and a few steps to the right and see if maybe you find that there's another picture hiding back there that, for example, would have, if we can go back to that picture one more time, would have eliminated that, there it is, this sheltered drive entrance here.
Oh, okay.
If I looked at that, I'd say, boy, I would really have rather seen the church in its entirety, although I don't know what's behind there. I don't know what's hiding back there. Maybe there's something that's not...
Could be an outhouse.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In any case, I wouldn't have thought of it.
Yeah.
In any case, taking a few steps left or right can sometimes improve your picture, so don't forget to do that.
Okay, well, thanks again to Randy McLaren and Tom Whitney for sending us photos for this episode of What's Wrong with This Picture. Dennis, do you have your quote for the day?
You know I do.
I knew you would.
Okay. Frank DeFord.
Yes.
You know Frank.
I knew Frank.
Yeah.
Frank and I were like this.
Frank was once heard to say, "She glances at the photo and the pilot light of memory flickers in her eyes."
That's sounds a little romantic, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
I like it.
I like nice photo quote. Okay, great. Well, if you have a photo quote you'd like to send that might be better than that one,
By all means.
Just kidding. If you have any comments or suggestions or requests or questions for What's Wrong with This Picture, please, you can email us at picture@rvnn.tv. You can also send us your photos, and we may use them on an upcoming episode of What's Wrong with This Picture. You have a suggestion or just some feedback, you can also call us at 1-877-578-RVNN and use extension 704. Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Flickr, and you can also get up-to-the-minute text messages, which will update you on what's going on with RVNN.TV by texting RVNN to 72727. I think that wraps us up.
I think it does.
Thank you very much. I'm Dave Dufour.
And I'm Dennis Guillaume.
And this is What's Wrong with This Picture. We'll see you again soon. For more TV like this from the world of RVs, head to rvnn.tv.